So let's get into these 10 different tasks that if we implement, it'll make sure that our plan gets aligned to the agile ways of working. And we are going to elaborate on these tasks more as we go ahead in this module. So starting with the task 1, which talks about how can we make sure on the agile project that we plan at a multiple levels. We call it as something like a planning onion. So you'll find the different layers as how there are in onion. The plan also has different levels, and these different levels of planning, which you would easily be able to observe, something that is done at a product level, at a strategic level, at a release level, iteration level, daily. So daily is something that you plan in your daily stand-up, you give commitment to each other, and iteration is for that 2 to 3 weeks timeline that you have agreed. So you plan for that bit. The release, maybe you might have multiple releases within an iteration, or you might have some sort of a cadence that every month you would like to release in production so that your end users start consuming that, start using that. Strategic planning largely is done from the long term point of view, from 3, 9, 6 months, or even for that matter, the plan that's created for 1 to 2 years. So when we create the planning at a different levels, the benefit is that we can incorporate the changes, we can incorporate the sort of the feedbacks that are coming at a different levels, and it's much more responsive. And this is also a bit of a rolling wave planning and a progressive elaboration principle. We're going to elaborate more on what does rolling wave planning mean and what does progressive elaboration means. But to just to quickly touch upon that, it covers about how do we plan in a much detailed way for the iteration. Because I know that for the next 2 weeks that I'm planning, I have got a better idea about the requirements that I'm working on. And I'm planning at a high level for the next maybe 2 to 3 iterations. So as I go on approaching the iteration, my plan is getting depth. And this way of working is called as the rolling wave planning. And progressive elaboration is a concept wherein as we progress on the product or a project development, the new and new information is getting unfolded, and based on that, you're adapting your planning. The task number 2 is all about making sure that the planning activities, the workshops, the sessions that you're running, they're visible, they're transparent, and most importantly, you're engaging the right stakeholders, which involves the people, which includes even the end users at times, again, depending on your context that you're working in. But largely, yes, you should know who are the key stakeholders that you need to involve in the planning bit. And once your planning sessions are running, you're making everything transparent. And by the end of the session, you should be able to come up with an artifact which is more like an adaptive planning and upfront planning combinations. That's the commitment that you have given in a way through that artifact, which you can then publish it so that everybody knows what is your commitment looks like for the next. It could be depending on the kind of plan that you've created. If it is release plan, that for the next few releases. If it is the product roadmap, then you're doing it for 3, 6, 9, or 12 months sort of a planning. And that kind of gives a good idea to the stakeholder about overall approach in the planning in order to reduce the uncertainties. The task number 3 is all about how can we make sure that as project moves ahead and it unfolds new things, what's important is really that we manage the expectations of the stakeholders effectively, so that whatever the expectations that the stakeholders have, you're kind of responding to those. And most importantly, they are on the same page about your plan, your approach, and what you're trying to commit through the plan. So that they would know that, when some of these key features that are coming or that are going to be delivered to them, what are some of the key outcomes that they want to achieve. You're focusing on those outcomes through your plan. So it's important really to make sure that the planning process that you are engaging stakeholders into is transparent, and it kind of aligns very well to the expectations of the stakeholders. Task number 4 is all about like adapting some sort of a cadence or a rhythm, as we say. And this rhythm or a cadence, which really helps in the planning process. And therefore, we say that whatever the cadence that you set for the iteration, if it is 2 weeks, stick to 2 weeks throughout the project. If it is 3 weeks, stick to 3 weeks throughout the project. then you're kind of establishing some sort of a cadence that, okay, I know for every 3 weeks, this is what I'm committing. So how long would it take if I measure my velocity? How long would it take for me to complete the items in the backlog at that point in time? We can also reflect back in the review or the retrospection sessions that we run to be able to understand the progress. And that definitely is going to help you in planning even better. And most importantly, you'll be able to also do the prioritization work. So you'll be able to prioritize items that are delivering maximum value in the early iterations. The task number 5 is all about how can you regularly review your plan, what you're doing, and adapt it. Keep it flexible. It's not like somebody signing on that plan. It's more like a iterative plan. It's something which is adaptive. So we need to be very open about the changes that are coming in the form of the requirements through the feedback that you're getting from the end users, your key business stakeholders. And also we need to try to understand the impact on the number of different dimensions in terms of your requirements, the schedule, budget, any other changes in the priority, and you go on adjusting your plan accordingly so that we can deliver the maximum value to the business. And that's the key, really. The task number six is all about when we are using the principles like progressive elaboration techniques. It's really important for us to understand the speed with which we are delivering the project. What's our velocity? What are the factors that are affecting the velocity? Understand the requirements in the backlog. And all this information really helps you in planning better. Task number 7 is all about how can you adjust your capacity in order to make sure that you also accommodate certain things with respect to the maintenance work, with respect to the operation and support demands that is getting generated. Just imagine that you start working on the project, you have some early releases which are already in production, your end users are using it, and now there could be defects, there could be the routine service requests that you might be getting. So you need some sort of a capacity to be able to respond to those requests, and you need to start factoring that into your plan. So generally 10 to 20% of the capacity you reserve within an iteration on such items. Task number 8 is all about understanding the initial scope, schedule, cost, and come up with some sort of a estimates, the range of estimates. So we never commit one single figure, and it's always a range of estimates. This project is going to take next 6 to 8 iterations to complete. So we are giving the range of estimates, or this project is going to consume the budget anywhere between 1 to 1.2 million dollars. So we're giving this range of estimates which is based on your understanding, your initial understanding of the items in the backlog. And you're factoring in all the different efforts that are required to develop the product end to end or the project. Task number 9 is all about refining the scope on a regular basis. So if you remember in one of the earlier modules, we touched a bit on the backlog refinement process. So we refine the scope on a regular basis. We understand the impact of the progress on schedule, cost, range of estimates. And based on the progress at that point in time, we kind of adjust our plan. And therefore, by the end of every iteration review, one of the things that we do is we go back and we update our release plan. And that is available to all the stakeholders. So that's adaptive planning, because we're adapting based on the current progress, based on the data that we're generating. By velocity, the speed with which I'm burning the story, I'm completing the story, the amount of scope which is defined in the form of the story points. I'm knowing that based on the speed with which I'm burning those stories. And that information I'm using to update the release plan so that we give the latest information to our stakeholders. The 10 number task is all about continuously using that data. As I mentioned to you just now, that there are a number of different variables that are generating the data in terms of the resource capacity, the size, the velocity metrics, and all of that will have an impact on the estimates. So at given point in time, we need to know that how much more do we need to spend on this project? How many more iterations are we going to require in this project? And all that we easily come to know based on the data that we're capturing, based on the progress that we're making.